SunnyV2, the stupidest criminals of all time.
In 2009, Matthew McNally and Joey Miller robbed a home in Iowa using masks drawn onto their faces with permanent black marker. Whilst on the run, the two
why did his kind of look like Batman for a second? It looked like he tried to make him Batman for a second.
Black marker. Whilst on the run, the two discovered that permanent black marker doesn't rub off easily, leading to their simple arrest and embarrassingly stupid mugshots. However, these two still look like geniuses.
No way, they tried to use Sharpie as like a mask to mask themselves? No way.
Home in Iowa, using masks drawn onto their faces with permanent black marker. Whilst on the run, the two discovered that permanent black marker doesn't rub off easily, leading to their simple arrest and embarrassingly stupid mugshots. However, these two still look like geniuses in comparison to some of the other idiots we'll be talking about as we discuss the stupidest criminals of all time. Take for example MacArthur Wheeler, who robbed two banks in broad daylight as he thought that pouring lemon juice on his face would make him invisible to cameras. When shown the bank surveillance footage, Wheeler refused to believe that he was visible, stating to officers, "But I wore the juice," believing that as long as he didn't come near a heat source, he should have been completely invisible. Police concluded the Wheeler was not crazy or on drugs, just incredibly mistaken, with the lemon juice mistake eventually costing Wheeler a 24.5-year prison sentence. However, if we're on the topic of terrible disguises, then we can't go past Dennis Hawkins, whose disguise as an old lady wasn't much better. His sweater accompanied fake boobs, a full beard, and fittingly clown pants, with this insanely recognizable outfit helping police to catch Hawkins only an hour after the robbery. The police chief for the area stated, "He would get my nomination for dumbest criminal, I think. You still have his black facial hair with a blondish wig. Definitely different." Different is also a good way to describe Patrick McGuire's disguise, who robbed an Illinois convenience store while covering his face with a clear plastic bag. He was only able to obtain $60 from the robbery. However, due to his extensive criminal history, he was sentenced to 15 years in prison for the stunt, meaning that he had to spend 1 year in prison for every $4 stolen from the store. Talk about a bad return. Equally bad was Paul Sinclair's, who attempted to rob a bank in Florida by using his fingers curled up into a gun shape. The quote-unquote weapon was so non-threatening that the bank teller gave him only $120, after which he'd flee on foot before being caught by police only 10 minutes later.
I'm surprised they gave him anything.
James Blankenship, who thought that robbery was legal as long as you did it at a certain time of day. Back in 2013, Blankenship broke into his own mother's home, after which the police were called, who would take to their Facebook page later that day to explain what had happened.
What is it, like the
Purge?
He fled
the scene upon seeing his mother.
Feels like you get an hour to do whatever the fuck you want. What?
When advised of his charges, he made the statement, "I thought you could only be charged with burglary if you break in during the night time." Blankenship was given 180 days in jail and ordered to pay a $100 fine, yet this wasn't the only time when a person was dumb enough to think that a law didn't apply to them. Because when Ruben Pavin was caught stealing from a charity thrift shop in New Hampshire, he'd state that he thought everything was free because of the name of the business, Finders Keepers. The sign did say Finders Keepers, so I took that DVD player, took it home, Pavin told the local TV station.
Okay, now this guy...
The stuff is still there on the porch, so I'm thinking to myself, Finders Keepers. They probably just put stuff out there for people to take. The business responded via Facebook stating, "This man who was caught on video is saying it is all a misunderstanding. He thought everything at our store was free. Is that really the best defense he could come up with?" After which Pavin reportedly turned in the stolen goods to police, holding that he's not a bad person or a bad dad, and is rather just unbelievably stupid. But was he as dumb as Derek Mosley?
Yeah, that guy, like, I don't know if, like, I feel like he almost kind of played it off dumb. Maybe. He was just like, well, the science is what the science says. Like, I feel like he had a piggy, or no, like a piggyback. He had a backup. Like, he was like, the science is what the science says, man.
Haven't reportedly turned in the stolen goods.
Or maybe he
police,
did actually
holding
believe
that he's
I don't
not
know.
a bad person or a bad
but
dad,
that sign is crazy.
rather just unbelievably stupid. But was he as dumb as Derek Mosley, who in 2013 attempted to rob a store named Discount Gun Sales by using a baseball bat? When Mosley allegedly barged into Discount Gun Sales and smashed a display counter with
rob
his
people
baseball
with
bat,
guns
the store manager
with a
simply
bat.
pulled out his own personal firearm and pointed it straight at the would-be robber, holding Mosley in the store until he was arrested and charged with first-degree degree robbery. A similar story then came out of Texas in July 2022
crazy.
when a gun store was robbed at knife point, although this tale instead ended in a body bag as the robber was fatally shot by the store owner as he tried to exit with his loot. But what happens when you accidentally call 911 whilst committing a crime? Pocket dialing the police is probably a fairly common occurrence. However, for Carson Reinhardt and Nathan Tekla-Merriam, it happened at the most unfortunate moment, specifically while they were breaking into a car. The alert dispatcher soon realized that the call was an accidental one, and moreover that the guys on the other end might be up to no good. For the next 35 minutes, the dispatcher stayed on the line, listening and gathering information, as Tekla-Merriam and Reinhardt did the following. Discovered a car that they thought they could burglarize, discussed how to break into the car, allegedly broke into the car, exclaimed in delight over finding narcotics in the car, became confused as to how and why a police car was following them, and reacted in disbelief when the arresting officer revealed that they'd been on the line to 911 the entire time. Scott Simon found himself in a similar situation, although under much more severe circumstances. Whilst on trial for murder in 2000,
I've had some scary moments where I almost emergency called some motherfuckers. The emergency call button is too easy. Well, I mean, I mean, as it should be, but fuck, man, sometimes I be slipping on that emergency fucking button, unfortunately. That shit be spooking me.
2015, Scott was successfully sentenced to life in prison, as 2 years prior he'd pocket dialed the police, while admitting to a friend that he was the one who committed the crime. He had no idea he called 911, a sheriff's office spokeswoman told the Miami Herald. He basically told on himself, as did Albert Bailey, although in a much stupider way. Bailey had planned on robbing a bank in Fairfield, Connecticut, although rather than exercising the element of surprise, he'd call the bank prior to the robbery stating, "I want $100,000 in large bills and no die packs. I'll be sending someone into the bank to get the money. Don't call the police, we are monitoring the police scanner." Prior to making this phone call, Bailey had already served 7 years in prison for a previous bank robbery. However, this new plan was equally ineffective, as after arriving at the bank to collect his cash, Bailey was locked inside, arrested, and sentenced to another 9 years in prison. Although if he wanted to avoid this time behind bars, he could have had a chat with Tito and Amanda Watts, who got arrested in Florida for selling tickets to enter heaven at a price of $100. Tito Watts said in his police statement, "I don't care what the police say, the tickets are solid gold, and it was Jesus who gave them to me behind the KFC and said to sell them so I could get me some money to go to outer space. You should arrest Jesus because..."
Is that not wood?
to enter heaven at a price of $100. Tito Watts said in his police statement, "I don't care what the police say, the tickets are solid gold, and it was Jesus who gave them to me behind the KFC and said to sell them so I could get me some money to go to outer space. You should arrest Jesus because he's the one who gave me the golden tickets and said to sell them. I'm willing to wear a wire and set Jesus up." The couple had apparently earned over $10,000 from the stunt, meaning that they were able to find people even dumber than them, one of which might have been Ruben.
Wait, $100 per one and they sold 10K?
Even dumber than them, one of which might have been
No.
He earned over $10,000 from the stunt, meaning that they were able to find people even dumber than them, one of which might have...
Bro, that is they sold 1,000 of them. Are you telling me they sold 1,000 of them? Is that how that works? Was that 1,000? 1,000 times 100? So you just add the 2 zeros from 100 to 1,000? Man, what the fuck? Either way, these motherfuckers, I can't believe it's that much.
Been Ruben Zarate. While attempting to rob a muffler shop in 2008, Zarate was told that the shop couldn't access the money safe without their manager, who didn't begin his shift until later that afternoon. Instead of bailing on the robbery, Zarate instead gave them his phone number, asking them to give him a ring the next time the manager was in. They did so later that afternoon, although after returning to the store, Zarate received no money and was instead met by police and charged with aggravated robbery. Then there was the man who gave the people he was robbing something even stupider. The unnamed robber walked into a London bank carrying a gun and a bag, which he'd take to the front desk before demanding £700,000 in cash from the bank worker. But after making his demands, the crook handed over his gun to the cashier instead of the bag. Investigating authorities stated, "The guess is that he is very inexperienced and panicked when he approached the cashier, handing over his gun instead of a bag by mistake." But it was Trevor Jones who left an even more damning piece of evidence at his crime scene.
Right.
After breaking into a house in Atlanta, Jones took a moment to check his
This is a
Facebook on the
small
owner's
oopsie.
computer before leaving without logging out. Less than 3 years later, a similar story entered news headlines, reading a 26-year-old Minnesota man has been tracked down by police after leaving his Facebook profile logged in at a house he allegedly robbed, although this story has a much funnier ending. The homeowner decided to message the robber via his Facebook, stating, "You left a few things at my house last night, how can I get them back to you?" which was followed by the robber agreeing to come back to the home so he could collect the stuff he forgot. However, the robber didn't get any of his items back and was instead arrested while still wearing a watch that he'd stolen from the night before.
Right.
While both of these idiots used social media poorly, at least they didn't brag about the robbery in a YouTube video, as is what happened in the bizarre case of Hannah Sabata. In 2012, at the age of 19, Sabata stole $6,000 from a bank in Nebraska, and while almost anybody else would have simply kept quiet, Hannah instead took to her YouTube channel Jelly Beanie to upload a video titled Chick Bank Robber, in which she'd straight
what
up
the
admit to
fuck
having
is
just
this
committed
description? I just stole a car and robbed a bank. Now I'm rich. I can pay off my college financial aid, and tomorrow I'm gonna... Brother, what the fuck?
a robbery. She'd then discuss her entire methodology for
Straight
the crime
just-
while showing
and
the money
said how
and the
she
amount
did
that had
it.
been stolen,
man.
before concluding the video by describing the vehicle she had used and that it had its license
What the
plates removed. This information eventually resulted in Hannah Sabata's arrest and
Oh, she might as well have just recorded herself doing it and fucking posted to YouTube. Like, what the fuck?
sentencing of 10 to 20 years prison, done so in a
Straight
public
gave him
courtroom
the whole
filled to
plan.
maximum capacity with
The
people
whole
who had seen
shit?
the video. Just 2 years prior to this, 21-year-old Frank
the
Singleton
fuck?
was being released from Palm Beach County Jail, having just served time for a trespassing charge. The only issue was he didn't have a car to leave the jail, so he decided to steal one from the visitors' parking lot, yet the car he decided to steal was a manual and he could only drive auto.
You know, I always wondered if that happened. Like, if this is some real shit. Cause like, sometimes like in GTRP, motherfuckers get out of jail and they ain't got shit. So what are they doing? I mean, they're taking a car. So I always wonder, in real life, does it actually happen? And well, shit.
Singleton sat in the car looking like an idiot before being arrested and sentenced to a further 6 years in prison, telling deputies that he tried to take the car because he didn't feel like walking to his home about 6 miles away. And while you may be sat here thinking that these criminals can't get any dumber, it's time to introduce 53-year-old Michael Anthony Fuller. While it's common knowledge that the US banknote doesn't go any higher than $100, Fuller had the genius idea to create a counterfeit $1 million note before trying to use it at his local Walmart. He loaded his cart with a vacuum cleaner, a microwave, and various other items totaling
Bro, how do you even break that
$472 before
bitch?
handing the $1 million note
Bro,
to the
how do you
cashier,
break that bitch
expecting
at a Walmart?
$999,528 in change.
Ain't no way.
Needless to say, Walmart wasn't able to facilitate this, and instead store staff called police. Fuller was later charged with attempting to obtain property by false pretense and uttering a forged instrument.
Right. That's wild. First place he went to with the $1 million bill was to the Walmart. To be fair, I could use some groceries too. Quite hungry still. That was absolutely fucking wild.